Hello, this is a video tutorial on how to create a cheap data warehouse using Azure Data Factory and Azure SQL Database. My name is Matt Philippi. You can find me on LinkedIn and CPA and Business Intelligence Architect. Feel free to connect with me there. I also am on YouTube and I have several videos focusing primarily on how to connect BI applications like Excel, Power BI, and Tableau to data stores in Azure and AWS. In this video, we're going to talk about how to use a transactional database on Azure SQL Database to ETL or build a data pipeline to a reporting and analytics database, otherwise known as a data warehouse, using Azure SQL Database. This is different. When people say data warehouse, most likely people will say, well, you should be using Azure SQL or Azure SQL Data Warehouse. Well, that's an extremely expensive product that fits for certain solutions, but basically you're using a full host, and every time you add a node, I believe you're using a full host. So it's expensive. Most use cases, you can probably just use a cheap Azure SQL database that costs $15 a month. Warning, we're going to be using the cloud here, but although I'll talk about security and costs, this demonstration doesn't necessarily include security best practices and cost analysis. It's your job to understand security and cost. You'll need an Azure subscription specifically to launch Azure SQL Database and use Azure Data Factory. You will need to have PowerShell CLI installed, specifically AZ PowerShell 1.6. I like to use the Azure Cloud Shell. That way I don't have to put any keys or anything on my computer. So I like to use the cloud as much as possible, including this. You'll need SQL Server Management Studio to connect to the databases. And then finally, you can use Excel or Power BI or Tableau to connect to the data source, the data warehouse that we will be creating. In this video tutorial, we have 30 steps. First, we're going to go in the Azure portal and create a transactional database using the sample database at AdventureWorks LT. Then we're going to open the server firewall so I can get access to the transaction server from my laptop. We're going to use SQL Server Management Studio to connect to the transaction server. Then we're going to use PowerShell to launch a command to launch a separate Azure SQL server for the data warehouse. I will use Azure Cloud Shell, but you can of course use the PowerShell CLI any way you like. Then we're going to open the server firewall to allow access to the data warehouse from my local laptop or wherever your machine is. I'm going to use SQL Server Management Studio to connect to that data warehouse server. Then we're going to go back to the transaction database. We're going to deploy that database to the new data warehouse server, copy it over, in other words. Then we're going to run a storage procedure to remove the foreign keys on the data warehouse database that was just copied over. This is optional. Step 9, we're going to create a Columnstore index, just like you normally would in a data warehouse. You get the compression and the speed on the queries. Then we're going to go into Azure Data Factory. We're going to create a data factory. We're going to create a linked service for the transaction database. We're going to create a linked service for the data warehouse database. We're going to create a pipeline task. We're going to select for that task a source connection, the transaction database link service that we created earlier. We're going to select the data set, 2 tables to copy over. We're going to then select the destination data store where those tables will be copied to. Then we're going to map the tables. Then we're going to map the columns. We'll just accept the defaults for the first table, sales.lt.address. Important here, we're going to add a truncate table script. This will help speed up the ETL process, the data pipeline. For the second table, we're going to do the same thing. We'll just accept the defaults for the column mapping. We'll add the pre-copy script truncate table. We're going to deploy the pipeline. Then we're going to check to see that that pipeline, the run succeeded. Then we're going to go into Management Studio. We're going to empty the tables so we can test to see that actually from an empty table the data ends up in there. We'll then run the pipeline again manually. We'll go back in to verify the data was inserted. Then we're going to create a trigger so we have like a daily process. Run it at 4 a.m. ETC. We're going to publish everything. And then we're going to use Excel, but you could use Power BI or Tableau using the ODBC connector to connect to the data warehouse and then check out and see what's in there. And then finally, we are going to delete the resource group, which contains all the resources we deployed, so we stop being charged. Step 1, we're going to go into the Azure portal and create a database called Transaction Database on Azure SQL Database. And we're going to use the AdventureWorks LT sample database. So I am here in the Azure portal. You can go to SQL databases there, or you can go to create resources, SQL database right here, or you can type it in. I'm going to create a new resource group called Azure Data Factory Demo. So very important, we'll be using this consistently. I'm going to create a new server. The server will be called Transaction Server dash Transaction Server. Oh, sorry, it needs to be a dash, Transaction dash Server. That has to be unique in the Azure world. So if that's not available, put a 1 or a number after it. I'll put a. You will need to remember this because we will be logging in through SQL Server Management Studio. I'm going to go with US West 1, very important. And then this checkbox right here. Normally I wouldn't use this. For purposes of this demo, I will leave it unchecked. And you need to remember West US. So we'll be using that consistently. You can use whatever location you like, but you need to do it consistently. Transaction database. This will be called Transaction Database. Okay. There. We created a new resource group called Azure Data Factory Demo. I used all underscores. Transaction underscore database. Transaction dash server. And then we'll just use 10 DTUs, 250 gigabytes. That should be good. Additional settings. Okay, important here. We want to select the sample AdventureWorks LT. So this will be our pretend transactional database. And then everything looks good there. Review and create. One more. $15 a month. And then create. And then I'll turn on the clock here so we can time this. And I'll pause it while we wait. Okay, great. Deployment is complete. I had just over 2 minutes. Right here it says officially 2 minutes and 2 seconds. You can go to resource groups. Go to the resource group we just created, Azure Data Factory Demo. And then you will see both the server and the actual database right there. Step 2, we're going to open up the server firewall to allow access from my local laptop to the server that we just set up. So, and we'll go to resource groups, Azure Factory Demo. I'll probably keep doing this over and over and over again. And then right here. So the important part right here is you can actually either do this in the SQL Server or the database itself. Let's just do Transaction Server here, SQL Server. And it's different. So right here it says Show Firewall Settings. And then Add Client IP. So this will add my specific client. And then here's the important part. You need to save. Updating server firewall rules. Successfully updated the server firewall. So now I should be able to access the database or the server from my laptop using SQL Server Management Studio. Success. Step 3, we're going to connect to the transaction server using SQL Server Management Studio. So remember, we just added the firewall there. So I'm going to go back to resource groups. I'm going to Azure Data Factory Demo. And here's the trick. We're going to actually log into the server, but you don't go to the server here to get the fully qualified domain name. You actually go to the database. Okay. Let me just show that again one more time. Don't go to the server, go to the database. And in the right-hand corner, you'll see the server name there. Okay. So I'm going to open SQL Server Management Studio. And then while that is opening up, I'm just going to click to copy here a couple times till this thing launches. Okay, it's now open. I'm going to paste that in there. And important here, I'm using SQL Server authentication, and these are the login credentials that we created when we created the server. So I pasted the fully qualified domain in, use SQL Server authentication, put in my login credentials, and then hit connect. And then there I am connected to the database right here. And then I'll click on the database there, and then you can actually see the transaction underscore database. And then let's just take a quick look at the tables there. And you should see the AdventureWorks LT tables. Once this gets loaded here, there they are. Step 4, we're going to launch a server only for our data warehouse server and our data warehouse database. Now it is entirely possible I could have just gone into the UI and launched a server and launched a database, but I didn't really want to do that because I just want the server only. But I could have done it here. I could have gone in and launched a blank database and later deleted that database. But I thought this is a good exercise just to work the Azure or PowerShell AZ CLI. And so I'm going to use Azure Cloud Shell. So shell.azure.com. So you got here, I typed in shell Azure Cloud. It's right here. So I believe I will automatically log in because I'm already logged into the Azure portal. And here's the important part. I'm going to go back here and look at this. Okay. So this is PowerShell 1.6, or I'm sorry, the Azure CLI 1.6. I get confused. But anyway, here's the command. New-AZ SQL Server, this cap sensitive. Here's the important part, resource group. We want to use the exact same resource group that we used that when we created. So mine is Azure underscore data underscore factory demo. Also, the location we've been using is West US 2. So Azure Data Factory demo with the underscores, West US. This is going to be our new server name. So I believe this needs to be unique in the Azure universe. So if this doesn't work, you'll have to put another number on there. Use 12.0 and then use the SQL administrator credentials, get credentials, and it will prompt you to put in credentials. So I have already put this out on, using Notepad++. So I'm just going to copy mine over right here. So it's a good idea to type these out. Okay, go back into Cloud Shell, go to the command line. I'm going to do Control V or right click, I guess, paste. It's going to ask me for credentials. I will in fact just use the exact same credentials that I used on my transaction server. Enter. And then we will wait. I will put the timer on while the server gets provisioned here. Let's see, let me start the clock. And I'll pause it while it does this. Okay, great. Less than 40 seconds. You see the server provision. Now I can go back into the Azure portal UI. I'll go to my resource group. I will go to Azure Data Factory demo. And there is that data warehouse server. Notice how there's no database associated with that. We're going to, in the next few steps, we're going to actually copy this transaction database over to the data warehouse server -1. Step 5, we're going to open the server firewall for the server that we just created so I can log in from my laptop. We just did this previously for the transaction server. So I'm going to go into the Azure portal. I'm in the Azure Data Factory resource group. I will go into the data warehouse server. You see this is type SQL Server. On the right hand side it says show firewall settings. Click on that. And remember, a two-step process here. First you need to add the client IP and then you need to save. And if you don't save, then it won't work. So I'm going to save. Updating server firewall rules successfully updated. I should be able to log into the data warehouse server from SQL Server Management Studio now. Step 6, time to connect to the data warehouse server we just created using SQL Server Management Studio. So we're going to have to go in and get the fully qualified domain name. So I'm going to go back to the Azure portal. We're updating the firewall, so I'll go up here to Azure Data Factory demo. Azure Data Factory demo. And then, now here's the tricky part. It's not in here. So remember, in Azure Cloud Shell, it actually tells us. So if you go back to the UI, it's probably in here somewhere. I just don't know, to be honest. I'm sure I could find it. So I have to go back to the Azure Cloud Shell where it tells me right here. So I'm just going to copy that. Copy that. Also, it really is just the server name itself that we created, datawarehouse-server-1.database.windows.net. So you could actually figure it out without even going in and looking it up. So we're going to connect to a database engine. I'm going to type in the data warehouse-server-1, SQL Server authentication again, credentials that we created, connect, and there we go. We now have access to our data warehouse-server-1. We also have access to the transaction-server. So we have both of them. We are connected to both of them. Step 7, now we're going to copy our transaction database over to the data warehouse server. We're going to do basically a full copy, the full schema. It should take about 5 minutes. We'll do this in SQL Server Management Studio using tasks, deploy database to Microsoft Azure SQL Database. So I'm going to go into SQL Server Management Studio, transaction server, transaction database, right click, tasks, deploy database to Microsoft Azure SQL Database. There's a wizard. Next. Okay, so we want the server connection. The target is this server right here. Well, since I already logged in here below, it should just automatically populate. There it is. It populates. I still use SQL Server authentication, and then my credentials. I will connect. Okay. Now, I don't want this to be called the same thing. I want this to be called Data Warehouse. Data Warehouse Database. Database. Okay. I'm going to go with standard. I'm going to go with S3. Do not use Data Warehouse for a tutorial. Super expensive, okay? Obviously, if you're deploying this to production, you can pick whatever you want. But for this, avoid the data warehouse and no need to use premium. I'm going to use standard S3. I'm going to hit next. This usually takes a couple seconds. Usually it's trying to authenticate to this new connection right here. So you have to be patient. It takes a few seconds. Here, I'll pause it. There, the settings are verified. I don't know, it took about 20 seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to hit finish, and it will start the copy process. So I'll start the clock here. This should take right around 5 minutes or so. Okay, I'll pause it while it does that, while we're waiting. Okay, go figure. This took 2 minutes and 25 seconds for me. That's the fastest it's ever done it. Usually it's right around 5 minutes. I got operation complete right here. So I can stop the clock, close the clock. The last line here is refreshing Object Explorer, close. And then if I go down to my data warehouse server here and I hit the refresh button, okay, highlight data warehouse server, hit the refresh. Come down, you'll see the data warehouse database. So I can open that up, open up the tables there, and you will see the full copy on the tables. Step 8, we're going to run a stored procedure to remove all the foreign keys on the data warehouse database. So just quickly, why would you drop the foreign keys? Well, first of all, you can't run truncate table, which we'll need in the ETL pipeline. Second of all, we'll be doing mostly straight table downloads, so we can actually rely on the source database and the constraints and the keys in that database, which is the transaction database, to perform those checks. And then also it slows down the inserts when doing ETL. So here is the script. Interestingly enough, between the time that I went and did this, figured this out originally and researched this and did this, this link disappeared. So with this particular script. So I did find a solution here. I went out to Bing. I said how to delete all foreign keys in the database. And then I went down here to social.msdnmicrosoft.com, delete all foreign keys in the database. And if you see right here, here's the script right here. Right here. So I'm going to copy that over here. I'm going to copy that whole script. I'm going to go to my data warehouse server, then I'm going to go to my data warehouse database. I'm going to go to new query. I'm going to paste that in there. Okay. And just before I do that, I will show you what will happen here. Keys. No keys. Oh, not in that one. Address. There's no address in there. Product. Okay. In the product table here, we have 2 FKs, foreign keys. Those should be gone when I run this. So I'm going to paste that in there. Execute, or you can press F5. And we'll see what happens here. Command completed successfully. Go to your data warehouse. Hit the refresh button. Let's go back to our product table. And you'll see that those FKs are now gone. Step 9. This is completely optional, and I'm just showing this for pretend data warehouse. You would do this, say, on a large fact table, for example. We're going to create a Columnstore index, which requires us to drop the existing indexes and then create a Columnstore index. So I'm going to go back into SQL Server Management Studio. We're going to actually, by the way, do this on the sales order detail. So I'm going to go here. We're in our data warehouse server, data warehouse database, sales order detail. So I'm going to go down here and actually go to indexes. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to click delete. Okay, see what happens here. Okay, that's gone. Then I'm going to drop this index. Actually, I'm going to drop this one right here. See what happens. Okay. Then, hey, I'll drop this one, the primary clustered index. Okay, let's see what's left here in the keys. Nothing is left. Okay. Now, go to highlight sales order detail. And then, let's see here. Sorry. It's not what I want. I want to go to new query. Okay. And let's check this out here. Okay. So, sales order detail. And I'm going to right click new index. Okay. And, well, we'll just do this. We'll just create clustered column store index CCI on, and then since the IntelliSense hasn't been working for me, I'm just going to drag this over here. Create clustered column store index, the name CCI on sales LT dash sales order detail. I will run that, execute, and then we'll go here to data warehouse, refresh, go down to tables, go look at our sales order detail table, go down to the indexes, and there you can see our clustered column store index right there. Step 5 or 10, sorry, my favorite part here and one of my favorite services, which is the Azure Data Factory, which is in essence a managed SQL Server integration service. That's a lot of services in there, but it's called Azure Data Factory. We're going to create a basic pipeline. So we're going to go into the Azure portal and we're going to create a data factory called Azure Data Factory Demo v2 West US, and we will use our existing Azure Data Factory demo resource group. So I'm going to go back to the portal, go to resource groups, go back to I'm going to create a resource group, and 1 second here. Okay, you can go into the marketplace called Azure Data Factory. Okay, ADF. Just Data Factory is what you want. You don't want this one. You want this one. Just plain old Data Factory. Okay. Create. Azure Data Factory. Sorry. Azure Data Factory Demo. I believe this one does not like underscores. So I use dashes. Use existing, what we've been using, what we created first. Azure Data Factory underscore demo. That one has underscores. Version 2. Okay, important here. Location. I don't think this matters actually for the purpose of this, but actually it does. You want everything in the same location, but technically I don't think it matters. So I've been using West US. And then look, you can set up version control on your ADL templates, your resource templates, but I'm not going to do that here. And then I'm going to hit create. So Azure Data Factory Demo, use the existing group, v2 West US, consistent with everything else, and then create. And this takes just a matter of seconds to create up. You're really just creating a placeholder. And I will go to resource group here. Go to my Azure Data Factory Demo resource group, and the deployment's successful, like less than 5 seconds. Step 11. Okay, we're going to create. Actually, there's a series of discrete steps here, and if you've ever done any ETL work like use SQL Server integration services, you do have to be very detailed and pay very attention to all these steps. The beautiful thing is once you get it set up and right, then you have an automated data pipeline that will copy our tables from the transaction database over to the data warehouse database. But this is a very detail-oriented steps. There's, let's see here, a lot of them. So we're going to take each one of them discreetly. So there's at least 10 here. But we will start with creating a link service called transaction underscore database link service. So I'm going to go to the Azure portal and resource groups, Azure Data Factory Demo. Go into my Data Factory. And then the first thing we want is we want author and monitor. So you can see here we're Data Factory v2. We want author and monitor. Loading. Okay. Let's get started. Okay. So go to the pencil author right here on the very far left-hand side. Open that up. We want to create a connection down here. Click connections. We want to click new. We want to go down and find Azure SQL Database. Continue. So I'm going to call this transaction database linked service. Okay. I'm going to pick my subscription, my pay-as-you-go subscription, server name. So it will actually find the servers based on my subscription. So transaction server is what I want. So very important here. Transaction underscore database link service. We want the transaction server. Then we want of course, we want the transaction database. we're going to use authentication. So I'm going to put in my username here, and then I will put in my password. And then you can test the connection. I believe you actually do get charged for this. I don't know. I bet it's like a penny or something like that, but I'll test my connection just to make sure that it works. And then connection successful, and then finish. There, transaction_database_linked service. Step 12, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did in the previous step except for the data warehouse database. However, let me apologize. There's a step in here we're going to do that I don't have in this slide, and you need to pay very good attention here, because right now it's likely that the Azure Data Factory won't be able to communicate to this server because we didn't set the firewall setting for the data warehouse server. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll set up the service. So pay close attention to this next step. So I'm going to go into the portal here. I'm going to go into resource groups, Azure Data Factory, okay? And for our data warehouse server, right here, this is very important, otherwise Data Factory won't be able to talk to your database. Go to Show Firewall Settings, and then allow access to Azure services. So normally I don't like to do this, but for this tutorial, it's appropriate. So make sure you click on, and then make sure you click Save. So remember, Data Warehouse Server, go to the firewall, allow access to Azure services, and make sure that you save that, okay? And then we can go back to the Data Factory. I already have it open here, but you can go back to Data Factory. Let me X out of here. Remember, we ended here before. You want to be in the pencil right here. You want to be down in connections. And you want to click New. And you want to go to Azure SQL Database. Okay. Now, so we're doing a new link service for Azure SQL Database, but this one we're going to call Data Warehouse Database Linked Service. Okay. Now we're getting to the part where the reason why we needed to open the firewall, because this will not work. So now it should. So select your subscription, which will then allow you to see your servers. Go to the data warehouse database, collect your authentication, SQL Server authentication as your password. Okay. Okay. So before I hit test connection, just a reminder. Remember, we had to allow access to Azure services. We had to save that for this data warehouse server. So if I didn't do that, this test connection would not work. So this should work now. Connection successful. And we'll finish. And now we have our data warehouse _database link service. And my apologies for that extra step that I didn't include in the slides as a discrete step, but that's important, which is allowing access to your server. Step 13, now we're going to create our ETL activity, create a pipeline task called pipeline demo. So we left here at the connections. Now we want to go to pipelines. Okay, or I'm sorry, we want to go up here to the upper left-hand corner, overview. There's a shortcut to this. And then go to copy data. So we're right here, and we're going to copy data. We're going to call this pipeline demo, for lack of a better word. Let's just do run once now. We'll talk about putting it on a regular schedule later. Click next. Okay. And we'll go to the next step. Okay, step 14. Pay very close attention to the next several steps. I'm going to break them down into discrete steps. So the first thing we're going to do is select source connection equals transaction-database _linked service. So we're here at source connection transaction database. Click next. Okay, great. Step 15. For that source connection, we're going to select our data set. We're going to pick two tables, salesLT.address and salesLT.customer. So here we are, connection, existing tables, LT address, LT.customer. Okay, those two, and then click Next. Step 16, okay, those tables that we just said we're going to copy, address and customer, where are they going to go to? Well, they're going to go to the data warehouse database link service. So here we are. We're at destination, connection, data warehouse, database link service. Click Next. Okay, step 17, we're going to map the tables. Very simple here. Just accept the defaults. So it says right here, nothing to do other than just hit Next. Okay, column mapping for the sales LT address table. We're just going to accept the defaults here again. Okay, so there's nothing more to do actually here. So I'll just stop it right here. Okay, step 19. I didn't do anything in the previous step really, just accepted the defaults for the sales address table. But here's an important part here. We need to add truncate table, which is going to wipe out the contents of the table in the destination database or data warehouse database, and we'll do it in less than a second. Truncate doesn't get log like delete, so it's very fast. So we just simply will type in truncate table and then the table name that we want. So we are in address here. So I'm going to go truncate table. And then I'm going to actually go up here and copy. Okay. And then there's a space. So it's truncate space table space the table name. And then that's all we need to do. Okay, step 20. Now for the customer table. We were just working in the address table. Now we're going to do the customer table. Essentially the same thing. So in step 20 here, we're going to first, we were just working in address, so now you want to click in here, which will bring us to customer. We're going to accept the defaults, and then we'll just leave it right there. And then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, step 21. Again, we want to add our pre-copy script truncate table, which will wipe out the contents of the table in the data warehouse database. So it's truncate space table. And then I like to copy here, copy it, paste it. So there's a space between the word table and the table name. And then that's all you need. Then go ahead and click Next. Step 22, we got the pipeline all set up and ready to go, and we just want to finish and deploy it. So we finished with Next here. So we got done with our destination data set. Now we're in settings. Just leave everything here. Nothing to change there. Click Next. Okay. Tells us about what we're going to do here. Click Next. Deploying. And then running pipelines. And then finish. So it's all done. Step 23. Let's verify the pipeline run has succeeded. So this little orange speedometer. I'm not sure exactly what to call it there. Okay, so we finish here at deployment. Click Finish. Okay, then we're back at the main Azure Data Factory page. You want to go to this thing right here. And ta-da! Succeeded. Okay, step 24. We're going to actually verify that this does work, because just because it's like succeeded doesn't mean we know it worked, because we'd actually originally copied over the full database before. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and empty out the destination tables with the truncate table statement. So go into SQL Server Management Studio, into the data warehouse server. Okay. So here we go. Data warehouse server, data warehouse underscore database, tables. So go highlight sales LT address, right click on that, select 1,000 rows. Okay, you can see data is in there. Let's go do the same thing for customer. select 1,000 rows. Okay, we can see data is in there. Okay, so why don't we do this? Go click on highlight the data warehouse database, go click new query. Okay, truncate table. Okay, and I'm just going to drag this up here again. I've been having trouble with the IntelliSense. Okay, truncate table, and I drug the address one up here, then I hit execute. So let me go highlight address. Now select 1,000 rows. Okay, there's nothing in that table. Okay, let me do a new query here. I'm going to truncate the sales LT customer table. Okay. Oh, I highlighted it. Don't do that. Oh, truncate table. Always helps when you get the correct command in there. So truncate table sales LT customer. Remember, I dragged that one up here too. Execute. I'm going to highlight the customer table name. Right click, select out. Okay, now there's no data in that table. So no data in the sales address and customer tables in the data warehouse database. Okay, step 25. This is the part where I get a little nervous. Okay, run the pipeline. Let's hope that this works. So I'm going to go into Azure portal, Azure Data Factory, into our Data Factory named Azure Data Factory demo, and then we're going to go find the pipeline. Okay. So I'm in Azure Data Factory. I'm in the monitor, and then I can go next to pipeline demo, and then I can click run. So check the box and then click run. You want to run one pipeline? Yes, I do want to run one pipeline. Okay. So let's check it out here, see what happens. Refresh. Sorry. Okay. According to this thing, it succeeded. Okay. That took about 9 seconds. Step 26, let's verify that the data was in fact inserted. So we're going to go into our data warehouse server, data warehouse database, and then run a select top 1,000 on address and customer to see if the data was inserted. So SQL Server Management Studio. Okay. I'm going to go data warehouse server, data warehouse database, customer, right click, select 1,000 rows. Hey, there's the data again. Okay, I did customer that time, so now I need to do address. Highlight address, select 1,000 rows. Success. Our pipeline is working. Step 27. So let's create a scheduled pipeline run. So to do that, we're going to go back into Azure Data Factory. I am up here now in the Author tab. I'm going to go to my pipeline, pipeline demo, click on pipeline demo, okay, and then I will want to add a trigger, okay, I want to add a new trigger, okay, choose a trigger, new, okay. Daily, 4 a.m., schedule. Okay, start date. Well, I can start today. I want it once per day. No end date. Execute at these times. So I'm just going to put 4:00, which will get me 4 a.m. UTC. It is activated. Okay, it starts today, no end date, and then I will click next, and then it's warning me we'll do this in the next steps. Make sure to publish the trigger, and then I will click finish, and there you can see one trigger added. Step 28, muy importante. Okay, your trigger in your schedule pipeline will not work unless you publish it. It actually gave us a warning right here. Make sure to publish a trigger. So we're actually going to go in and publish all. So we'll be right here. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to go to, so right here in the pencil thingy, and then you can see one right here. I'm just going to click publish all, publishing, deploying changes to the factory. Successful. Deployed one of one resource. Successfully published. So that should trigger daily at 4 a.m. UTC time. Okay. The whole point of this thing to begin with, which is to get data into a analytics BI client like Excel, Power BI, or Tableau. So you could do this with any of those because we're using an ODBC connection and we're using the data warehouse server. So just as a refresher, I'm going to go back into our resource group, Azure Factory Demo. And then here is our database. So we want to connect to the data warehouse _ database. And here's the server name. So I'm just going to copy the server name. I'm going to open up Excel. Okay, blank workbook. I'm going to go to data, get data from a database. We'll be using the ODBC connector. Okay. Okay, I will type in the server name, and I don't know, for Azure SQL Database, sometimes I have issues with this, so I actually will type in the database name even though it says optional. I don't know why. Okay. Okay. And oddly enough, since I already logged into this, it's not bringing me to the login screen. But you would use SQL Server authentication and then type in your credentials, just like you've done for all the other logins for your data warehouse server and your data warehouse database. But here we go. There's the customer address. And this is actually the data that was copied over during our pipeline run. Okay, finally, at the end here, we're going to delete our resource groups so we stop being charged. One of my favorite things about Azure is the resource groups and how you can just delete them all at once. Of course, it's pretty dangerous if you're actually using production, but if you're testing and trying stuff out, it's great. So resource groups, Azure Data Factory Demo. Delete resource group. Okay, I'm going to cheat here and just copy it right here. Okay. For some reason, it did not like that. For some reason, it's taking Data Factory Demo. There we go. Okay. Typed it in. Now I can hit delete. And it'll probably take about 5 minutes to delete all of it. So deleting resource group, Azure Data Factory. So we're good. Everything will be deleted. Stop being charged. So that concludes this tutorial where we set up a sample database as a transactional database. Then we set up a reporting and analytics database, a data warehouse. And then we used Azure Data Factory to set up a pipeline, which is basically a table copy from here over to here. And before we copied anything, we made sure that we truncated these tables. Again, my name is Matt Philippi. You can find me on LinkedIn and Business Intelligence. Feel free to reach out to me for connections if you have any questions, if you need any help with anything. And again, you can find lots of videos, tutorials specializing in connecting cloud data sources and BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, and Tableau. Thank you for watching.